we are about done with the big name signings. We are about done. I think most teams in Major League Baseball now know what their rosters will look like, with the possible exception, I mean, an inevitable exception of the odd add-on here, there, and everywhere. But is there anybody out there that you're aware of that is without a job right now?
Well, I'll
We should
mention a
have
few
one.
names. Certainly, the Carlos Correa situation, at least as we speak, is still unresolved, and that's a very complicated one with the New York Mets and what his eventual future is going to be. I think the Boston Red Sox, their agreement with Rafael Devers on a contract extension
I want to
was
talk
a
about that.
really important thing for them to at least answer a bit, and sort of respond to the loss of Xander Bogaerts to the Padres, which really, I think, shook the organization and their fans to their core about where their direction is and what they're all about. So they certainly had a choice in this, but they had less of a choice about what to do with Devers once Bogaerts left. I think that in terms of free agents out there that I would mention, Jurickson Profar is still there. I think he's a really intriguing free agent. Brandon Belt is someone that I would mention, and with the Blue Jays in particular, I do think Belt could be a good fit because Toronto still, even with the arrival of Varsho, could add one more left-handed bat. You look at the way that their infield sets up, they were able to, by bringing in Varsho, add a left-handed bat without necessarily sort of eliminating the possibility of adding a DH. So for me, the Jays could add one more lefty bat. Belt is someone that really jumps out to me. But in general, most of the heavy lifting has been done. And you're right. We're basically, especially in a World Baseball Classic year when spring training starts earlier, we're a month away from camp. And I've always believed that once you get to this stage, Brian Reynolds has been mentioned a lot in trade conversations. It gets a little harder to trade a player of that significance this close to the start of camp, because the on the other side of the ledger, you start to talk yourself into liking the team that you've got and to say, well, I'm not sure I'm going to give up 2 or 3 prospects to get this player because I want to see what I've got in camp. And now that camp is a month away, I think most teams are more predisposed to just show up to spring training with what they've got in the roster right now.
The Devers signing is intriguing to me, and maybe it's just me, but when you talk about the superstar players in the game, Devers is not a name that comes up regularly, at least in my mind. I know he's a very good player, but is he a $30 million guy? Because the $30 million contract was one that has been reserved for, the mega star. And
He
it
is
makes
for
me.
me. He is for me,
He
and
is.
especially in the way the market is trending. You have
Well,
seen
that's just it.
players, right? You have seen players who you didn't necessarily view as superstars signing for $20 million and north, $25 million a year. Just the pay structure in Major League Baseball on a per year basis is incredibly rich right now, and so Devers is someone who got to the major leagues early, plays a very, very coveted position at third base, hits for a ton of power, and based on the way that he plays the position and his bat, projects to be good for a really long time. And he's left-handed. So you've got a left-handed bat at Fenway who plays third base. It's an overall skill set that's pretty unique, and he's been relatively durable over his career. I just think he's the kind of guy that you give this contract to, especially when you've lost Xander Bogaerts and drawn the ire of your entire fan base, who are asking you, what's going on? Because as you both know.
But you didn't go and acquire somebody to replace Bogaerts.
Right.
You signed basically a guy who fans thought you'd have anyway.
Right. Well,
you gave him $30 million a year.
Right. But he had only 1 year left before free agency.
I understand.
And to me, if you look at this Red Sox roster, this was probably less about this signing. To me, was less about making the team better for 2023, because to your point, it didn't.
Right.
It was more about reestablishing their brand, affirming to their fan base that they're going to still spend to keep top talent.
We'll try. Yeah.
Right. Because if you don't do that, and if you enter spring training without having signed Devers, the narrative that's written and spoken by every local and national reporter for the entire spring training is not what a great thing it is. Baseball's back, Fenway Park, what a wonderful franchise and history. The entire narrative is, what is going on with the Red Sox?
Yeah.
Are they a mid-market team all of a sudden? And it's just more and more pressure on ownership, which, as you both know, Fenway Sports Group owning the Penguins, owning Liverpool, there's always been this perception and criticism of how many teams in different sports can you run effectively without impacting the other. And it's just, if you don't sign someone like Devers, it opens you up to a whole new level of criticism that I just think Red Sox ownership was not interested in hearing in 2023.
But John Henry's first love, we all know, is the baseball team, and we know that. I know that he's got partners now, but in the end, the criticism that he was getting personally in all of this was a little heavier than most. The thing about Devers is that he probably got so much more money in order and was able to leverage what was going on with the Sox in order to get a bigger and longer contract.
There's no question. He benefited from the turmoil. He benefited from Bogaerts' exit.
I'm curious. I'm curious about the Carlos Correa thing you talked about. Are you still having doubt that he's going to play for the Mets?
I don't think anything's for sure right now, John. I would say that I have some doubt. I'd still think that that's his best option. My understanding is that the Mets, like the Giants, when they evaluated his medicals, they had some concerns about his previous ankle injury that, according to what he had said to The Athletic earlier in the year, was at least I'm not going to say re-injured, but there was a sort of a unique sensation that he had in it on a play late in the season, which could have raised some alarm bells about his body and his durability. I look at it this way. The Mets fallback option, if Correa does not sign there, is that Eduardo Escobar is their third baseman, who is still, in my view, a really good player who should have a pretty good 2023 season. The alternative for Correa in this deal falling apart is he's back on the market after having 2 deals fall through because of concerns over his medicals. That is a very difficult negotiating position for his agent, Scott Boras, or anyone else to try to have a successful agreement emerge from. And so as a result, as you guys both know, all free agent contracts are an exercise in risk management. And the long-term deal with Correa, because of this injury issue, is now magnified. And it's just not entirely clear how comfortable the Mets are going to be with this longer-term deal unless there is a restructuring of it. I'm sure Scott Boras' position is that it shouldn't be restructured. So that's where we stand. That's why there's been no resolution here, because I think the Mets know in the back of their minds, the Mets know how little leverage Boras and Correa have here. Because if they say, well, I'll walk away and go back on the open market, I'm just not sure what they're going to find there. Whereas the Mets say, well, if we walk away, we've got Eduardo Escobar, who we like a lot. We're okay.
Yeah.